coming up. They used to have it in the geography books. You can't even find the motherfucker no more. All right, let me just go and put this one in here. Okay, this is the source of the Blue Nile, which is the second largest branch coming out of Lake Tana. Coming out of Lake Tana in Ethiopia. So that's another branch. And you have to understand this is, and so from even there, now the blue, even though the White Nile is longer than the Blue Nile, which is coming out of Ethiopia, is more powerful. You see what I'm saying? It's more powerful than the White Nile. And so when you start talking about Egypt, when Egypt floods and and they talking about Egypt flooding, it's the Blue Nile that causes Egypt to flood like that. You see, is actually the Blue Nile. And like I say, when they come together as one river at Khartoum, which is in Sudan. You see it in Sudan, but when it meet up, the Blue Nile, in many respects, it overpowers the White Nile. And so when you start talking about that black silk that come down and fertilize, that come out of Ethiopia. And so Ethiopia is the mother, geologically is the mother, because all that silk that come down in there. And so you see right there, Lake Tana, and you can see that Ethiopia is now trying to build a dam up in there. And Egypt been talking shit. And so if you know that and you understand the demographics of what I'm telling you, you understand whoever is at the source of the river, they are the true masters of the river. Because if you dam that river and you understand that the Blue Nile is, the fundamentally the more powerful source of the water that's going down into Egypt. You have to understand that Egypt is a desert. There is no rainfall. You see, it's little to no rainfall in Egypt. So almost 100% of water coming into Egypt is from the Nile. And so, and then understanding that the Blue Nile is the more powerful of the rivers, this is the true source. You know what I'm saying? That's going to ultimately give the Egyptians water to drink. Now, Ethiopia is intending to build a dam, and if I'm not mistaken, they didn't already started. And so Ethiopia was threatening war with Ethiopia. Because you can shut them down. Yeah, you can shut them down. You can shut off their water. You know what I'm saying? By putting the dam there. So ultimately, from a military standpoint, you can see he who controls the beginning of the Nile controls the Nile. And so even when you're thinking about, ancient times, you know what I'm saying? The Africans that were up the river always had one up on those who were down the river. You know what I'm saying? The enemy, they could have easily, dammed that river, you know what I'm saying, and caused a lot of death and destruction down, in Egypt. But those were their brothers. And so they didn't have that type of animosity to do those type of things. And so that's why, Egypt could never really war with the upper, Africans up the river. When you see certain, Egypt warring, those were particular tribes. You know what I'm saying? They probably did, but that wasn't all Nubians. That was a particular Nubian tribe that they might have had. And so brothers get into it every now and then. Ain't nobody saying that they don't. Europeans get into it all the time. They don't make it seem like, they of a different race. Shit, Hitler jumped on every damn European nation up there. They didn't. So they don't separate them under, just because he jumped on them and so these are different races. No, the Egyptians had, certain kings had aspirations, and and certain tribes of Nubians, and they even jumped on certain Egyptians. They didn't, that fell out of pocket. You see what I'm saying? So that's just, the reality of relationships. You see that, where, brothers do get into it. That don't mean that they not brothers. You know what I'm saying? And so he who controls the upper river controls the river, because the river is flowing down into Egypt. You see? And so militarily, you got to know that. Militarily, you got to know that. And so we've already shown that, and people don't understand that Israel is still a part of Africa. Even when you're talking about tectonic plates, and you look at the tectonic plates, Israel is on the African tectonic plate. It's still a part of Africa. What they call the Dead Sea is what separates the African plate from the Arabian plate. You see, so again, this is top side up. It's showing the development of Africa from the beginning of the river down into Egypt. Egypt is at the bottom. Uganda, all the way is at the top. South Africa is at the top of Africa. Egypt is at the bottom of Africa. You see, and even though our African people, originated for the most part around those lakes. You understand? Around these lakes, what they call criminally renamed Lake Victoria, Rwanda, Lake Malawi, Tanganyika. I had all them lakes. Let me get them lakes for y'all. So you got to know this. Let me see here. Where is that? Let me see if I got a map of all. I do. I'm going to drop it in there so y'all can see these lakes. But this is where our people gather because it's water, it's food. And you got to understand that these are freshwater lakes. You see, these are freshwater lakes that are in Africa. This is the second largest freshwater lake system outside of the Great Lakes of Michigan, which is the largest freshwater lake system in the world. And the Great Lakes of Africa is the second largest. Where is it at? Let me get my map. Where my map? I should have dropped them in there earlier, but we teaching as we go. Okay. Come on, here they go. Right here. Here they go. Bingo. So you can see they didn't named all these goddamn, you got Elwood, ain't no goddamn Elwood or no Albert. You see, you got Kivu, you got Tanganyika, and Malawi. All these is freshwater lakes. You see, freshwater lakes you can drink, and not only the fresh water, you got the Congo rainforest right there to the left. You got the Great Lakes, freshwater Great Lakes to the right. This is what they call the Garden of Eden. There is no more a lush paradise of life, because you're talking about so many species of life in the rainforest. And then you're talking about, the fresh water. Africa got more fish than any continent on the planet. You see, and so that's why the people gathered around this area. This is why they, and then when they left this area, they went south. They didn't go north. They went south. So that's why you got the Khoisan and those groups. You see what I'm saying? They went south. And so the Khoisan, one of the oldest peoples on the planet, along with the Twa. You see? And so when you see this map now and you see When you look at all so-called ancient civilizations outside of Africa, that's why they start in the South. You see, when you talk about India, you see, and so it started right there on the Indus River, right there, and facing Africa. You see, right there, the Indus River. That's where the Harappian culture, Mohenjo-daro, and Harappa. The Harappian culture started right there off what today they call the Arabian Sea in the south. And that's why when you look at Mesopotamia, it also started in the south, right down there on what they call the Persian Gulf. You see, because the Africans are sailing in. And so wherever they sail and they land, that's where the civilization started. So even when you're talking about the oldest civilization in Europe, it's Crete. It's that little island down there in the Mediterranean, the Minoan civilization, which is the oldest civilization in Europe. Ask yourself, how the hell the oldest civilization start on an island? You see what I'm saying? How it started on an island. You know why? Because if you study the Nile, you're studying the sequence and the development of culture and civilization. And so as it comes down the river, when it gets to Egypt, then it goes into the islands first. Then it touched the mainland. So that's the sequence of civilization. And as the Africans are coming, that's why when you go into Arabia, they call the southern portion of Arabia Arabia Felix. It's paradise. And so this is the southern Arabia was always considered an extension of Ethiopia, of Aksum. You see, of Aksum. And so from that point, you see in the southern regions of all nations on the planet, civilization started in the south. You see, and so even when you come across, you see that Mexico and what you call the Americas is the earliest civilization, with the Olmecs starting in the south. You see, starting in the south, then start in the north. You see, as the Africans sail across, they come right into what they call the Gulf of Mexico, and this is where the earliest of the great civilizations, that was established in Americas came from. And that is already been proven that the Egyptians came across. Is when you break down the tenets of Olmec culture, you can, there's no doubt about that, majority of what they, of their culture and civilization were aspects of the Nile Valley culture, from the pyramid building, the temple complexes, even the carving of granite, you see, which is a highly technical skill that would have taken thousands of years to develop on the level which they had obtained. You can't do that in 100 years or 200 years starting from scratch. That's 1,000 years of Masonic development. You see, thousands of years of Masonic development. Right here, this is out of the New York Times. You see, this is coming out of the New York Times. 43,000-year-old mine discovered in Swaziland in the South. You see, it's 43,000. This is in the New York Times, family. This is not in, some made up from some African, this is from the New York Times. And so this was back in 1970, February 8th, 1970, the New York Times. South African archaeologists have reported discovering the world's oldest mine. The mine is an iron ore mountain in neighboring Swaziland. It's 43,000 years old, according to carbon